Do the kids? Obviously, this can vary quite a lot depending on the age of the children, and I guess what you want them to be exposed to and their level of understanding. I don't spend a whole lot of time around children, so I wouldn't say that I'm qualified to know what sort of information a child at a different age can handle. But do they understand why they're in homeschool?
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Their parents are very open about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do they feel about it?
They are so funny. Some of the comments that they come out with, like about Dan Andrews and things like that, I'm like, I love you guys, because they're awake. They're completely awake to what's going on in the world, to a point where it's hard because you don't want your children to be worried about the state of the world.
Yeah.
Like, it's a heavy burden. Sometimes I feel like I have too much knowledge, and if I was younger, it might be hard to deal with that.
Yeah.
But the parents have done a really good job on what their kids know about. It's I think the way you present information to your children, and the parents want their kids to know what boundaries they need to have as well, when to know when something is safe or not safe for them.
Yeah.
So they've given them enough information to make them feel safe and know their own boundaries.
Because it's a fine line, right? Obviously, and I totally agree. I think that sometimes coming to a realization that possibly not all of society is set up right now to in your best interest potentially is a pretty big thing to deal with. And I know when you have these conversations, sometimes it can just sound doom and gloom the whole time, and it can get quite depressing, and it's like, oh, everything's falling apart, everything's horrible, that kind of thing. And I definitely don't want these conversations to just lean on that. I've got a very hopeful perspective for the future. I think everything that's happened has kind of lit a little fire under everybody, and it's starting to shine a light on
definitely
a way to really build and push society in a really beautiful direction, especially if there's lots of these children are going to be adults in
I'm so hopeful
20 years,
especially with them as the future. And the things that their parents are teaching them about life in general, like really healthy eating for one, to protect them into the future. They learn about how to make bread, and they know all the nutrients that they need. They make healthy food choices most of the time. They learn how to plant and grow their own food at home. I held a workshop at my house for them for 3 weeks, and we learned all about the bees and the impact that the bees have on the world. And we're all becoming more self-sufficient, I think. And I think that's really important. If we can do that kind of stuff and take charge of our own lives. These holidays, I've been learning about medicinal herbs and food, and how we can implement that into our diet, and getting away from the pharmaceutical processes and practices in our life. So there's so much hope, and there's so much you can just keep learning about and implementing small changes in your life to improve the quality of your life, your own health, your family's health. And these kids are learning all that stuff from their parents.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I think that they're picking this stuff up at such a young age. By the time they're 18, 20 years old, they're going to be masters at it.
Yeah.
They're going to have a way better understanding and have an ability to set their lives up like that from the get-go, I guess.
And I love the way, we do a lot of debating in our group. Because it's not all about written tasks. I really like the kids to use their voice as well. And for some of them that struggle with writing, for me, I know that just because a kid can't put the words on paper doesn't mean they don't have that information. So we do as many oral tasks as possible. And I'll get them to discuss with each other and debate, reasons for and against different things. And the level of conversations that my homeschool kids have compared to kids in mainstream school, I'm like, wow, these guys can really think deep.
Is it just their ability to actually articulate the knowledge that they have inside?
And listen to another person's point of view. And challenge them on that, but politely. All these skills are stuff that they've really honed over the last year in particular as well. It's like there's not just right and wrong. There's not just black and white. You know, you can have your opinion. Somebody else can have their opinion. You can still be friends, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon that's one of the most important skills that a human can have. Like the ability to communicate at that level is, some people are really good at working things out in their own mind, you know, and with themselves. But I feel like and I don't know if you see this with children, but a lot of people learn from having feedback from somebody else, like trying an idea out with someone and them liking it, disliking it, having a different opinion, and just like what we're doing right now, having a conversation and trying to work out, you know, what's the commonality in the middle.
Yeah.
And I definitely heard from a lot of parents that their children throughout lockdowns completely lost that skill in a lot of ways in terms of just communication, because they weren't doing it at all. Like I spoke to a lot of parents who had children who were like 5 years old and then didn't go to school for like 2 years and couldn't talk, basically, like could not communicate anywhere near the level that they should have, because they were just never exposed to it for the first few years of their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which blows my mind.
Even in 2021, when I was teaching a grade 1 class, it was still, you know, we had to wear masks every day, and there was so much loss. Like children couldn't see your facial expressions, you know.
Yeah.
I never wore a mask in class. I always took it off and just put it on when the principal was coming around. Because kids need to see that you're smiling, you know. There's so much non-verbal cues that go on, and when everyone's covered in a mask, it was so bad for learning. They didn't talk as much because you couldn't hear very well.
So you're like, why bother?
Yeah. It was their social and emotional learning in 2020 and 2021 across the board. No matter what school I went to, it was down. You know, there were massive impacts on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.